Hello and welcome to While You're at the Library. We're so glad to be able to invite you into our parlor
Said the spider to the fly.
and sit down with us and have a chat about books. I'm Catherine Poulter, I'm the children's librarian, and here's John Bickelhaupt, and
Hello.
he's a reference librarian. Capan, tell us who you are and what you do.
Who am I? Today, I am the young adult librarian of Capan.
Yes, good.
I'm Becky Hadley. I'm the lead circulation librarian.
I'm Trent Clegg. I also work in reference.
Very good. Trent, why don't you begin and give us a wonderful book to start off with, or
Okay. I brought Really Important Stuff My Cat Has Taught Me by Cynthia Copeland. If your internet goes down and you need to get your fix of adorable cat pictures, you can come in and check out this book. Not only is this book full of adorable cat pictures, but it's also got little nuggets of wisdom like go your own way, or be fearless, but have an escape plan. I really like that one. That one's very funny.
Don't hesitate to show your claws.
Yes. This is kind of a whimsical little book, but it's also got some more in-depth things. Like, for instance, this one has a story to go along with the picture. Act like this is the moment you'll be known for is the caption, and then it has a story down here. You might also have a quote from some famous person. This one right here is by Bishop Desmond Tutu, and he says, "Do your little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world." And so this is very much an uplifting kind of book, and this is available on the news shelf in the library, second floor.
oh, that's nice. Did you discover that when the internet went out one day?
I actually discovered this as I was shopping for books, and I said, I think people will like this book. So I decided to purchase it. But and I will make, here's a good one. Know when it's good to blend in and when it's better to stand up and stand out.
Oh, nice.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not normally a cat person. I will make that admission on air. I'm not normally a cat person, but these are some great cat photos. And so, yes, really important things my cat has taught me.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trent.
Sure.
Becky, what do you have for us?
Dragons.
Dragons,
great.
yes.
Really
Imagine.
important things her dragons have
they're
taught
like
her.
Not cats.
They're like
I've had
cats, but
dragons.
they fly.
They're a little bigger. So this book is by Jasper Ford, and it was actually written for young adult. He writes
With the
the
double F.
Thursday Next, that series in the adult section. And I came across this book. It was on the bottom shelf, if that means anything to anyone.
Yes.
This is called The Last Dragon Slayer, and I like dragons, so the title caught my eye too. This is about Jennifer Strange, and she is a foundling that works for Kazam, Mystical Arts Management. She is the person that will schedule out wizards to do daily tasks like unclogging a drain or rewiring your home. Because magic is not what it used to be, and it's kind of not as powerful. And as she is out and about doing her daily tasks, she comes across this man on a bench, and he's been waiting decades and decades for her.
Wow.
It has been foretold that she will be the last dragon slayer, and he can pass along his duties to her. And she's like, wait a second, I'm the last person ever that you should have picked for this. And he's like, no, I have it in writing, and your name is the last one here. So, many moons ago, back when there was more magic around, the dragons were a problem. And so the wizards and sorcerers came together and made what they call the Dragon Lands. And it separates two kingdoms that do not get along, but it also keeps the dragons contained. But the people don't realize that the dragons are contained. They think the wall just keeps the people out, but it also keeps the dragons in. And there is only one dragon left.
And they want to kill him?
They've slowly died off. And the Dragon Slayer is the only one who can pass the wall without getting turned to ash. Well, Jennifer decides to go and talk to the dragon, and she learns a lot more about the Dragon Lands and the Dragon Pact. And she is told that she will for sure kill this dragon on Sunday at 1 o'clock. She's like, no, I'm not going to, because the only reason I should kill a dragon is if he has broken the Dragon Pact, meaning he's crossed the wall and come to hurt humans or their farms, their livestock. And somehow somebody has set things up to look like the dragon has gotten out to cause a car wreck and to cause perhaps a mysterious death. So she goes back to talk to the dragon, and she has lots of people that are against her, whether to kill the dragon or to not kill the dragon, because once the last dragon dies, that barrier will go down and people can go in and claim land for themselves. So people are starting to line up.
It's about greed.
It is. So they've heard about the prophecy. They want to stake out their land, and she's all pro dragon. She wants him to live a long life, and it doesn't matter how many hundred years old he is, he can die naturally. Well, she gets in there and she's talking to him, and she finds out that part of the dragons being entrapped is it also makes it so dragons cannot be born.
Oh.
So when a dragon,
So it's not the last dragon.
when a dragon dies of old age, that is the end. But when a dragon is slayed,
Slain.
2 dragons come.
Okay.
So she has a choice to make, whether to please the people or the dragons. So this is book 1 in the Kazam Chronicles. I
Have
think
they
is
all
what it's
been
called.
written?
I think 3. I'm not sure if it goes beyond that. I've only read the 1. But she is the key to bringing back big magic, which is also talked about in the other books.
Does the
So,
dragon want to die?
yes, he does. He is old, and he has had a well-lived
done.
life. So, Last Dragon Slayer by Jesper Ford, found in the young adult section.
Ooh, cool.
And it was the bottom shelf before we shifted.
Great.
I can put any book on the bottom shelf that may not belong there, but
You can put it there.
I can put it there.
Very good. Tell us about some of your books, Kathan.
Some. I'm going to start out with a program that just started this week.
Today.
Today is the very first day of Audiophile Sync audiobooks for teens. They're not just for teens, they're for anybody who wants to download 2 free titles a week from April 26th, which happens to be today, until July 25th. So all you have to do is make sure you have the program that's going to work with this, which is Overdrive,
And it's free.
and it's free. And then you can go in and you can make as many accounts as you actually want to, but not that you need to. And then you may download these 2 titles every single week, but you only have a week to do it in. So this week, by the time this airs, you may not get to get these 2 books. The books are The Great War by David Almond and others, so short stories from World War I, I believe, and A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. And I've not read either one of these.
Yeah.
Have you read this one?
No, I was just nodding at the title.
Okay.
It's a play on a Sherlock Holmes
It
title.
is.
Okay. But that one was checked out, so I didn't bother looking up information about it because I thought, well, by the time this airs, maybe you won't be able to get those anyway. But the next 2 books are Solo by Kwame Alexander and The Devil's Highway, which is the nonfiction title it's been paired with, by Luis Alberto Urrea. And I don't know much about them except for the Kwame Alexander book is written in verse, so it really shouldn't take too long to read it. It seems to be about a boy whose father was a rock star, said he was rich, and his father's a washed-up rock star and drug addict with delusions of a comeback. And this boy Blade has a girlfriend named Chapel, and her parents have forbidden their relationship. And so they have to, walk through this situation. And every thing in prose or whatever is probably their thoughts talking back and forth. So I haven't read it yet, but it should be interesting. And it's always really wonderful to listen to these on audio because they just come to life in a different fashion than if you just read a book. And you can do it while you're walking or doing your yard work or your housework. They said that it sings with despair, hope, and love. The boy, Blade, is 17. He's also a budding musician, like his father was a musician. The Devil's Highway, I'm not sure how they tied these two together yet, but this is investigative reporting about what went wrong in May 2001 when a group of 26 men attempted to cross the Mexican border into the desert of southern Arizona. Only 12 men came back out. And it talks about immigration policy. All of this is very timely information right now. And what some of the people were like that smuggled people across the border. And what they went through. And anyway, it's really, this is a true story, The Devil's Highway. And like I said, I don't know how they've tied these two together yet, but those will be the ones starting next week on Thursday, the 3rd of May through the 9th of May, and you can download both of these titles for free. And then there's a whole list of these at the library as well as online, and I encourage you to do this. Every time we've downloaded books, we've really enjoyed listening to them. They're very, very well narrated, and they're really interesting to listen to.
Thank you. That's good. John, what do you have here?
Oh, I have plenty of stuff.
Oh, good.
Should I true crime or books or how about
Or just
The
books.
Truthful Art
How about just books?
by Alberto Cairo, and this is a book about infographics. And we have very few books on infographics. In fact, prior to this one, we only had one that I was aware of. It was The Visual Display of Quantitative Information by Edward Tufte. And I felt like we needed more, because this is a big subject these days. It's displaying information, statistical information in a visual way that creates understanding.
Like pie charts.
Like, well,
Or
pie charts
graphs.
have limited use.
Well, sure.
Yeah, so one thing that he's talked about was like, here's one on dubious models, and there's a bar graph that shows the increase in internet speeds over time. But it's a real sneaky kind of a bar graph.
It is.
Because it leaves out information like how many people have these connections as compared to how many people don't. And the years are kind of cherry-picked because they do 2007, 2009, 2011, 2012, and 2014. So that's this is an example of something that can be used to kind of
Skew people's understanding.
hide the truth rather
To support
than
what you
make
want to
it
say.
apparent. And so another thing is that I found that I thought was pretty cool was here it is. Okay, so he is talking about something. He says, "What I've just described is regression toward the mean, and it's pervasive. Here's how I'd explain it to my kids." Imagine that you're in bed today with a cold. To cure you, I go to your room wearing a tiara of dyed goose feathers and a robe made of oak leaves. Dance Brazilian samba in front of you. Feel free to picture this scene in your head, dear reader. And give you a potion made of water, sugar, and an infinitesimally small amount of viral particles. 1 or 2 days later, you feel better. Did I cure you? Of course not. It was your body regressing to its most probable state, one of good health. So that's interesting and educational, knowing about things like that. And here's the one that really caught my eye. It says, as demonstrated by the website, this example came from spurious correlations. You don't need to look into data too hard to find stirring but utterly absurd associations between disparate variables, like the more chocolate a country eats, the more Nobel Prize winners it has. So this is a good book, both in terms of having really good information in it and actually presenting it in an amusing way.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so I was pretty excited about this. I ordered another of his books. It's called The Functional Art, which is newer than this, and we don't have that yet. So
Thank you, that's exciting. I have here the list, the official list of the 2019 Young Reader's Choice Award nominees. And I just need to show you one of those. Well, I'll show you more, but this one is one that is a very beautiful book. It's called Pax. It's by Sarah Pennypacker, and it's about a boy who gets a pet fox, and Peter, the boy, rescued Pax when Pax was just a baby fox, a kit. But then Peter's father enlists in the military, and the family has to change their way of life, and his father's going to be gone, and Peter has to go stay with his grandmother. The thing is, his father told him he needs to go release Pax back into the wild, and Pax has never been in the wild. And so Peter and Pax go on a journey together, and it's just a beautiful story, and I think that you'll really like it. This is one that is nominated now for all of the school children in Pocatello, and actually all of the Pacific Northwest. If they read this book and other books in on this list, then next April they can vote for their favorite. And this is one that I really liked. I don't know if it's my favorite because there's some other really good ones like Dog Man that I'll tell you about next. But tell us, Trent, about something else that you have there.
Okay. I am currently reading a book called The First Paul by Marcus J. Borg and John Dominic Crossan. Basically, these two gentlemen have gone back and tried to separate out some of the misconceptions about the Apostle Paul and early Christianity. They are both very, very learned. Marcus Borg is a distinguished professor of religion and culture, emeritus at Oregon State. He's also a canon theologian at Trinity Episcopal Cathedral in Portland. And Mr. Crossan is emeritus professor of religious studies at DePaul University in Chicago. So these two gentlemen, they've done some work and some studying into theology and into scripture as it's come down to us. And just the things that I have been learning as I've read this book, I didn't even know that not all of the epistles of Paul that are in the Bible are certainly, absolutely, 100% bona fide written by and from him. There are 3 that are almost certainly not written by him, 3 that are argued over, and then 7 that are pretty much certifiably genuine from him. And they talk about how the original Paul was a Jewish Christ mystic.
Really?
That's what they call him. And then they try to explain what that would mean as far as his perspective and his experience. And then they say that his vision was actually much more radical than other church leaders were comfortable with, and over time his vision got toned down and toned down and toned down until we have a really distorted conception of who Paul really was and what his message really was. And we have several books on the Apostle Paul in our collection at the library. This is the first one that I've tackled, but I find it a very fascinating subject and kind of elucidating. In fact, from what these two gentlemen assert, the Apostle Paul's teachings and his vision were much closer to what Christ himself was teaching than what you later find
in his
the
epistles.
Yes, exactly.
Now, by vision, do you mean that experience on the road to Damascus, or his entire ministry?
His ministry, his perspective on the gospel,
Okay.
but obviously his experience on the road to Damascus informed that. So for those of you who enjoy some of this very in-depth historical religious writing, I would highly recommend the first Paul by Marcus Borg and John Dominic Crossan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So I have what's called a Regency romance. This is called Miss Burton Unmasks a Prince by Jennifer Moore. And Meg Burton is sent to England to find a rich husband to marry and save the farm.
Where is she from?
She is actually from South Carolina. So she goes to England to do
Find
her
a rich-
debut, I guess. So as she's staying with friends of the family, she hears things about Prince Rodrigo from Spain, and it's all like negative things. And one day she's out visiting the stables because she loves horses, and she meets a stable hand taking care of the prince's horse. And he introduces himself as Carlo. Well, Meg and Carlo really like each other. And she finds more things out about Prince Rodrigo. Anyways, the reader knows Carlo is really the prince.
Oh.
He doesn't want her to know that because he's tired of having to live up to the name. The reason he is staying with these friends is his parents have been kidnapped by Napoleon.
Ooh, that tyrant.
And he is he has sent out his soldiers to track down where they are at, and he's kind of in hiding. And he has promised his sister that he will tell Meg who he really is at the ball. Well, as you can guess, when he goes to tell her, she doesn't believe him, yada yada. But then they also get kidnapped by some of Napoleon's soldiers. And they have to figure out how to get away, but also listening in so they can figure out where his parents are. So this is a fun, clean romance filled with balls, fancy dresses, horses, and sword fights. So lots of spying goes on in there. So Miss Burton Unmasks a Prince by Jennifer Moore, found in the adult fiction section.
Thank you. Exciting.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, I'm going to talk about a book that I don't have here because it's in such high demand that I couldn't bring it in. And this book is on the New York Times bestseller list, and I think we have 3 copies now from what I just looked up. And it's a book called Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. And I read this for my book group, so we haven't had a chance to discuss it yet. But if you liked the book The Orphan Train or The Nightingale, this will be probably appealing to you as well. So on the front cover of the book, you'd see 2 girls with their backs to you. And these girls are sisters. But this starts out in 1939 in Memphis, Tennessee, with a family that lives on the Mississippi River on a shanty boat. And there are 5 children and the parents, and the mother, the parents are like in their late 20s, and the oldest daughter is Rill Foss is her name, and she's 12. So the children are 12, 10, 6, 4, 2, and the mother, who they know as Queenie, is pregnant. And she is about to deliver twins, but because they didn't know she was going to have twins, they tried to have the delivery on the boat with a midwife, and the midwife says, I can't do this. She has to go to a hospital. So a storm is approaching, and one of the other riverboat people helps him get Queenie to the hospital, to hopefully save her life and the baby's lives. But it then goes from there to present day in South Carolina. A woman named Avery Stafford, who's a federal prosecutor, and she's engaged to be married, and her father is a senator, and he's had some health issues, so she's come home to be with him and help him out and help him to navigate some uncomfortable questions about health care crisis, because he has some supporters that have done some things that weren't very good in the healthcare industry, like with people that are in nursing homes. And her grandmother, Judy, is also in a care facility because she is suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's. And it's kind of tricky because she has the money to be in a very nice facility, but not everybody does. So something happens while she's with her father visiting one of these nursing care facilities for a photo op. A woman there seems to recognize her and a bracelet that she's wearing that has a dragonfly on it, and calls her by a name that Avery's never heard before. But it triggers something in her, and she wants to know more. Well, you go back to the story of the family, the Foss family, and the mother does not make it through. Well, she makes it through the delivery, but they say that the babies have been stillborn. They didn't make it. And before their parents can come back to the boat, the law comes and kidnaps the kids. Basically kidnaps them.
The law?
Yes. They come and they say, oh, you know, we're here to take you someplace safe. We know that you're alone. And the children are all, you know, really confused, and they think, well, maybe they're going to go see their parents in the hospital. But what's really happening is there was a Memphis-based adoption organization run by a woman named Georgia Tan, and this is based on truth. The story of this family and this other woman, Avery, are not, but they are based on people's lives that went through this. This became one of the most notorious real-life scandals where people were kidnapped, children were kidnapped, or convinced to go with authorities and then live in orphanages so that they could be adopted out to better families than maybe they were living in.
Oh,
there were
sad.
stories of children who were little kids that were walking to school, and while they were walking to school they were picked up and taken away. In this story, 5 children were just up and taken, and so and they was kept very quiet. They were given new birth certificates, and you know, just stories were made up about where they were from and who their parents were and why they were in the orphanage, and they were sold to wealthy people, either movie stars or other people who maybe just lost a baby in childbirth, but there were people who had money and means, and it started out maybe with the premise of trying to help these children, but then it became quite the controversy. Well, it was terrible. There's another book that we used to own, and it's called The Baby Thief, which I need to get a hold of because it's been missing since 2011. Somebody has never returned it to us. This book by Barbara Besantz Raymond is the true story of this woman, Georgia Tan, who sold over 5,000 neglected, abused, and stolen babies in the 1950s. And it tells the stories of people who she popularized adoption, and I'll talk about a couple other books after this. And she had even the governor on her side and a political network that supported what she was doing. I think it's a really classic example of people that think they're doing something good and something for the better and start believing it themselves. They thought that it would spare adoptees the taint of illegitimacy, because if you had a child out of wedlock, then you might not be treated as well. Or maybe you were poor and they just thought it would be better for these children. And in the time of closed adoption records, people didn't know where their kids had been taken. And anyway, it's sad, it's horrible. And I think it was really fascinating, and I really, really want to read this book as well. But this first book that I talked about, Before We Were Yours, is really hard to get a hold of right now because everybody wants to read it. But it's very well written, and anyway, so those are 2 books, and I'll talk a little bit about some other books similar to that next time.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. Let's see, what else did I bring here? Okay. This is I Heard You Paint Houses. Okay. And that particular the phrase in the context of this book means, I hear you kill people.
Wow.
Okay. And
Right.
it's about the case of Jimmy Hoffa, which has mystified people for years. This is written, the author Charles Brandt interviewed a man named Frank Sheehan, who was a close personal friend of Jimmy Hoffa's.
And he tells all?
He tells all. He says that he committed the murder.
Wow.
And but he has to, before he will divulge all this information, he has to have guarantees that he'll be able to live out his life in an old folks' home, you know, in a care facility that he's in. And it's just one of the things that I like about this book is that it's very colorfully written, because he's got, you know, the language he uses is
Appropriate for television?
well, it's it's from the underworld. It's from crime, you know, crime slang. A lot of it's crime slang, and I mean, I heard you
Like
paint
the title,
houses,
yeah.
like the title. So, and he is able to like dish some information on a lot of other things too that are interesting. Like, let's see, there's. Okay. Oh, there's the fellow in the sunglasses is Crazy Joey Gallo, and this is a photograph of him pleading the Fifth before a government committee, the Senate hearing, which was being chaired by Bobby Kennedy, and he later ended up dead too. And Mr. Sheehan was also responsible for that one. So this is an interesting book on that score, and it clears up a lot of mysteries around the Teamsters and the mob families and the connections between the mob and the Teamsters in the 60s, 50s,
Wow.
60s, and 70s. So recommended.
Shouted from the rooftops.
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't paint houses.
No,
Or
neither
kill
do I.
people.
Right.
Best I might manage a small room.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of ties in with the next story. This book is called Captain Underpants, but the book I'm really talking about is checked out right now. It's called Dogman, and it's another one on the New Young Reader's Choice nomination list.
And it's written by the same author.
And it's written by the same author. And instead of being a man who wears underpants and is a superhero, Dogman is about a policeman. A policeman who was involved in a tragic accident and his head fell off. At the same time, there was a really good police dog who had been also involved in an accident, and they would have to put him down. But they decided, let's just put the dog's head on the man. And so Dogman is a policeman. And he's a really good policeman. He has a great sense of smell, and he doesn't talk back, and he
wags his tail a lot.
well,
doesn't have a
he doesn't
tail.
have a
Oh.
tail. He has
Does he bark?
Yeah, he has a human's body. But he can solve crimes, but he often does it in an unconventional way. So, Dogman, the next, or one of the other books that children all over southeast Idaho and the Pacific Northwest will be reading. and written by the author of Captain Underpants, Dave Pilkey. Fighting crime, committing crime, you know, it's all part of the same thing.
There's a theme there.
That's right.
Well, speaking of people who lose their heads, here we have a DVD of a production at the Vienna State Opera of Donizetti's opera Anna Bolena, or in English, Anne Boleyn. And as we know, Anne Boleyn lost her head. The operas of Donizetti, the reason that I've got these three here is we finally got in the third in what has come to be known as Donizetti's Three Queens trilogy. Here on the cover of the third one, we have the opera singer Beverly Sills, who in the 1970s made a name for herself by performing the title role in all three of these operas at the New York City Opera. And when she premiered one, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then finally in one opera season she did all of them, which nobody had been doing before. And so we have the Three Queens trilogy here at the Marshall Public Library, all three operas by Donizetti. But yes, this first production, Anne Boleyn, and I'm a fan of Donizetti's music, of opera music, and we have Anna Netrebko and Elena Garanza. I think I just butchered the second name, but it's an excellent production. I've watched it all the way through. Fantastic singing, really great staging. Sometimes opera stagings in this day and age can get a little wacky as directors try to do something to pique an audience's interest or highlight or underline in blood a certain aspect of the story, and a lot of times they get to be kind of silly, but this is a really well done production that's true to the opera itself, true to the story. It's very good. So Anna Bolena is the first one. The second one we have is Maria Stuarda, Mary Stuart. This is about the I want to say she was a cousin to Elizabeth I.
Mary Queen of Scots.
Yes, exactly, Mary Queen of Scots. Anne Boleyn was the mother of Elizabeth I. And that's kind of how this all ties together. So you have Elizabeth I, and she and Mary Queen of Scots were kind of rivals there for a while as far as who had the right to the throne of Britain, the throne of England. And so ultimately, Mary also loses her head. Doesn't get replaced with a dog's head. She just loses her head. But the thing that makes this opera interesting is that it has a really tortured history, and for a while we didn't have the actual music for it. We knew that it existed, but the music for it was discovered in a Swedish archive in the 80s, and now we finally have the actual original version of the opera. And in this opera there is an episode that never occurred in history, where Elizabeth and Mary meet in a park and they exchange words. And one of the reasons why this opera got lost was Mary calls Elizabeth a vile word, and because she said that on stage, everybody was shocked, and so the opera had to go away. But in this day and age, it's not such a bad word, and you can watch this opera without fear of shocking yourself. Maria Stuarda. And then finally, Roberto Devereux. If you've ever seen the movie from the 30s with Bette Davis, The Private Lives of Elizabeth and Essex, Bette Davis and Errol Flynn, this is basically the same story, where we're not sure historically whether Queen Elizabeth and Essex had an actual relationship or not, but this opera kind of makes it a little more explicit and says, yeah, they kind of did, but because of machinations in the court, she has to sign his death warrant, and he also loses his head, and she kind of goes crazy because she had to kill someone that she loved. And Beverly Sills, out of the three queens, this was the one that really made the name for her. And this is the one that she was most famous for, which is why we made sure to get this particular version of it on DVD. So yes, come check out the Three Queens. People lose their heads. It's great.
Thank you. Exciting.
Well, I don't have any beheadings. However, I brought some Shakespeare.
Oh, good.
William Shakespeare's Star Wars, Verily A New Hope. So, Ian Doescher, I think is how you say his name, has taken the original 3 Star Wars and has put them to Shakespearean language. So if you actually, it's written like a play, And I thought I'd read you a couple parts to see if you can think of these in what we know as A New Hope. Yeah, the first one. Okay. So, Squeak, what is that? A question hath he asked? Say, what is that? Oh, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, help. Thou art my only hope. Oh, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, help. Thou art my only hope. Beep, meep, meep, boo. Okay. I can tell you can picture this. Okay, let's go towards the end of the movie. Han is saying this. Thy rescue hath been wondrous, thinkest thou not? Say I at times I doeth maze myself. Amazing hath my rescue of thee been. Amazing is my hand in piloting. Amazing all my part in this escape. Amazing I, 'tis true, my handsome looks.
Oh my
Fantastic book. It's got some fun illustrations in it too.
Chewbacca.
Chewbacca. Some
Does
really
it-
Does
What
he
happens-
speak Shakespearean too?
Chewbacca?
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to find where he's at.
What
You
about
know-
when they're in the garbage? Lo, it is
You know-
squeezing us.
Squeeze.
It squeezes us.
It
Yes.
squeezeth us.
It's all great. I did not look for that scene in here. Yeah. Can't find the garbage scene.
Oh, well.
Look, there's Jabba.
Jabba the Hutt.
Jabba the Hutt.
So that's okay.
He was originally written into the script of A New Hope,
Yeah.
Was he?
and they even filmed it, but didn't look like that.
No.
It was
Okay.
just a person in a robe.
Oh,
Yes.
really?
I heard about that.
But Jabba the Hutt has to look like
Well,
That
obviously.
blob.
Well, now he does, because that's what we
Yes.
know him as. Anyways, this is a fun take on Star Wars. And the reason I brought this up is because in May, it's Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th.
Yes.
Yes.
So we do have a Star Wars display at the library for the beginning of May.
Oh yes. Very good. Thank you.
Well, I don't even know how I could not even bother. I'll just talk
Segue.
about orphans and
No
things
beheadings.
like that.
Well, wasn't Luke rather
Oh,
an
maybe
orphan?
was he an orphan? Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to bring a few more books that talk about adoption, and this one is called Culture Keeping. And it says, since the early 1990s, close to 250,000 children born abroad have been adopted in the United States. Nearly half of these children have come from China or Russia. And they talk about the analysis of two popular adoption programs. So if you're interested in adoption, because we were talking about orphans in these other two books, this one is a little controversial. The Great Arizona Orphan Abduction, and this was research done in 1904. 40 Irish orphans were taken to a remote Arizona mining camp to be placed with Catholic families. However, the Catholic families were Mexican, as that was the majority of the population. And the town was furious about this interracial transgression, and so they kidnapped these children and nearly lynched the nuns and the local priests that had brought them there. The Catholic Church sued to get their wards back, but the courts, including the Supreme Court, ruled in favor of the people who kidnapped the children. So again, talking about adoption and crossing cultures and race at this situation. There is also a book called The Child Catchers, which is children being adopted, I believe. Okay, so this gets into the debate about why children are adopted from maybe third world countries. And again, people thinking that they need to do something to better people's lives. And they said that these children, so adoption has long been enmeshed in the politics of reproductive rights. And to tens of millions of evangelicals, adoption is a new front in the culture war. So instead of saying, don't get that abortion, they're saying have that child and give it up for adoption. And there's some question about whether there's not some money in there saying, have that child and we'll pay you to have that child so we can have some children here and adopt them. So that one might be interesting. This is maybe a little older edition, but this is a series that we carry called Current Controversies, and it will to talk about both sides of the issues in adoption. And then there were the orphan trains, and these were trains of children who were, and there's several of them here, the Orphan Train Rider, One Boy's True Story. That might be the same thing. Oh, we rode the orphan trains, and then orphan trains taking the rails to a new life. This is in the mid-19th century, where 30,000 orphans who really were orphans and homeless, living on the streets in New York City, were surviving by selling newspapers, begging, and everything. And somebody set up, this minister named Charles Loring Brace came up with the idea of placing these orphans around rural America, and they took them across country on trains. Some of them had better lives than others, and I remember reading another book. These are just youth versions of that story, but lots and lots of interesting information about orphans and people thinking they're doing the best thing for others, and sometimes it's not always the best.
Wow.
So,
Thank
lots
you.
of books.
Thank you. John, share us
Okay.
a couple of your books.
This is called Directorate S. It's by Steve Call, and he's the author of another book that was called Ghost Wars, and it actually is should be considered like a 2-volume set. And the first volume is an account of the CIA's machinations in Afghanistan before 2001. And it talks about all, the policy decisions that were made, and the kind of disconnect between the policies that the Pakistani government wanted to pursue and those that the U.S. wanted to pursue, which all came to a head after 2001, when when the towers fell, and it was after that things really kind of went to pieces in the policy, and you had really Directorate S is like it's a secret police, or not police, but secret intelligence. It's Pakistani intelligence, and they're involved in largely supporting the Taliban, because the support of the Taliban meshed with their goals for the region. And after 2000, after the 9/11, the United States came barreling in and was not not willing to negotiate any kind of an accommodation of the Taliban, and so you ended up having Pakistan, which is like a alleged ally of the United States. At the same time, there's this organization within the Pakistani government that's pursuing ends that are
Opposite.
and so things kind of ended up going neither country's way. And this is relevant because we've been there now for 16 years in Afghanistan. We still have over 15,000 troops there. And so this is a book, and the book Ghost Wars tell a lot about how we got there.
Wow.
So
Interesting. I'll just show two books quickly. The Wild Robot is one of the new books on the Young Reader's Choice nomination list, and there's a sequel called The Wild Robot Escapes. The Wild Robot is a robot who gets stranded on a desert island and gets turned on. And so he is a sentient being. Granted, he's made out of metal, but he still has his own thoughts, and he learns, and he becomes a mother to a duck.
he becomes a mother. Okay.
Well,
Fair.
it hatches and it bonds with him, and eventually it's his story. It's a great story. And then in this book, The Wild Robot Escapes, it is his sequel and his continuing adventures. So these are two good books that I'm excited to revisit. I like to reread so that I'm really up to date. So I'll reread this one and jump into this one. These are by Peter Brown, and it's really quite exciting.
Excellent.
Trent, I think we have time for one more from you.
Okay. Well, this book just came in today, and at the library, when we get new books, they get set behind, for the second floor books, they get set behind the reference desk. So those of us who have ordered them will know that they've come in and we can check them off our order list or whatever we need to do with them. This is not a book that I ordered. This is a book that someone else ordered. This is in the 500s. That's normally sciences and that kind of thing. But it looked intriguing to me. This book is called The Spinning Magnet, the Electromagnetic Force That Created the Modern World and Could Destroy It, by Alana Mitchell. And basically, as I've perused through this book, and just kind of read snippets and looked through the table of contents, she talks a lot about the electromagnetic currents that are, around the Earth and that are through the Earth, and it's the Earth's polarity, with the North and the South Pole, that protect us from the solar radiation and that kind of stuff. And she says that there is increasing evidence that the Earth's poles are going to switch.
Well, they've switched.
That they've done this before, and that usually coincides with mass extinction events, and that there are signs that it could do it again. It was fascinating to read about certain regions. Like, we now have satellites around the Earth that are monitoring more closely the Earth's electromagnetic currents. There are regions where the electromagnetic current has weakened so much that solar radiation is actually... Anyway, I need to delve more into this book, but it looked fascinating. You have this picture of the Earth, and then you've got a dynamo here, and I've always been kind of fascinated with stuff like this. So the Spinning Magnet by Alana Mitchell.
Oh,
looks
exciting.
intriguing. It's a science book. It looks intriguing.
It does. I like science. Very good. And one last one from you, dear Becky.
This is Mary Higgins Clark, Mount Vernon Love Story. This was her very first book, written in 1969. Now, we all know Mary Higgins Clark as the Queen of Suspense. She usually does a lot of thrillers, murders, kidnappings. This is nothing like that. This is the story of George and Martha Washington and their relationship. Now, the thing that I really liked about this, I'll call it a biographical novel, because it's based on true, but of course conversations that happen can't really be proven. So you learn things like Martha never went according to the name of Martha. Her friends all called her Patsy, which I had never heard that.
Patsy Bass.
Yeah, George Washington was tall. He was 6'3", which was a lot taller than the average height for a man at that time. This book was originally called Aspire to the Heavens, which is something that George's mother was always telling him. It was like the family motto, Aspire to the Heavens. And his mother was not a very kind person. And so growing up, he spent a lot of time at Mount Vernon. And so it's not a surprise that that's where he wanted to be. But this also, I love how Patsy, or Martha, would try to be where he's at. And they had a very happy marriage, and it makes them very human. They had a lot of the same experiences and emotions that we have, not this, whoa, this is a George Washington, he's, we know him as, founding father, and he was...
Humanizes him.
It really does, it really does. So, Mary Higgins Clark's first novel, Mount Vernon Love Story.
Great.
Well,
That's
if we're
very nice.
sorry, I was going to say we should still be mentioning maybe the 50/50 book quest, right? So what categories does that one fall in?
I specifically read this one for a book that has a U.S. president in it.
Ah, very good. And
So.
you chose one from the bottom shelf?
Yes, so
The
she
bottom
had that
shelf.
one.
I was going to say bottom shelf.
Okay.
I haven't completed this one yet, so
You could probably be poetry, kind of.
it's a play.
It's a play. Does it have death in it? A ghost.
Of course, it
Has a
death
ghost?
in it.
There you go.
Miss Burton Unmasks a Prince was
A romance. no?
an author I had never read before, and it was also recommended by a friend.
Very
So.
nice.
I was going to mention that Before We Were Yours could fall into the categories of based on a true story, author I've never read before, recommended by a friend because it was my book group, book that has a mystery because it really does keep you guessing, and book with a government agency in it because the adoption agency and governmental people were involved in it. Anybody else have ones that they want to? Robots or
Read it again.
read it again?
This has a government agency in it.
There you go.
Yes. An award
Nonfiction.
winner.
Lots of nonfiction here.
Yeah, yeah.
I heard you paint houses have death in it.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
good.
murder.
History.
A book that
natural-
might intimidate someone.
Definitely.
A book that makes you happy. Part of a series.
This is part of a series.
There you go.
Yes, that's true.
There you go.
A lot of the books that we read can fit many categories in
Yes,
this.
multiple categories.
And we're always looking to see which category we want to put them in.
I just read the book and then find a category to fit it.
Me too.
I've made a spreadsheet, so I say how many categories it fits in, and then I start plugging them in, then I start switching them because I don't have enough category.
Oh, that's funny. That's good. Well,
It's been fun though.
it has been fun, and it has been really fun to chat with you. So, welcome back. Now you can go and read your own books, and please come to the library and tell us what you've been reading and share that with us so that we can hear what is on your mind. Thank you. See you soon.